Hi and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today I'll be doing a review of Victorinox INOX watch, but first I would like to thank Silvertime Watch Store for supplying this watch, and if you want to check them out you can click on the link in the description. Now this watch debuted in 2014 on 130th anniversary of the company and was heavily advertised as an incredibly tough watch with no less than, you guessed it, 130 tests performed on it. Now some of these tests were a bit weird, like being washed in a laundry machine for 2 hours at 90 degrees, but some were pretty impressive, like being run over by a 64-ton tank, or being dropped from 10 meters of height onto a concrete surface, which is what G-Shocks were known for when they were first introduced. And speaking of G-Shocks, one has to mention them, as I see this watch as a Swiss version of a G-Shock, with the usual Swiss attributes, meaning more elegant, more traditional, and naturally more expensive than its Japanese counterpart. When this watch was released, I tried to find out what exactly Victorinox did to make this watch tough, as the specs suggested that the watch is powered by a standard quartz movement, and some reviewers said the watch is just a standard quartz that's been advertised as super tough, when in fact any quartz watch would be that tough. But then again, people say that about G-Shocks as well, and although it might be true when it comes to digital watches, with analog ones, it's a bit different, as they have parts that can fall off due to high forces during an impact. Now, the way Casio solved that on their Gravity Master series, as they're all analog, is by encasing the movement in alpha gel, an incredible material that absorbs shocks and vibrations in such an impressive way that the only explanation for its existence is that it comes from aliens. Now, if you don't believe me, watch this video of an egg being dropped from a height of 6 meters onto only 5 centimeters of that material. In case that wasn't enough, they made the hands balanced, so they have the exact same weight on the front part as well as on the counterweight part, meaning that when the watch is subjected to shock, the stress is evenly distributed. On top of that, the shaft of the hands is much wider than on usual analog watches to make for a sturdier attachment. And if all of these failed, they incorporated what Casio calls a tough movement technology, meaning the watch checks the position of its hands once every hour and corrects them if necessary. So as you can see, that watch differs from regular quartz watches quite a bit. When it comes to INOX, the only info they give and boast about is that the dial is what they call a monoblock design, meaning it's completely stamped. So the applied hour markers aren't really applied, but are part of the dial and has just been shaped to look like an hour marker, so the hour markers can fall off. They may have done some other alterations to the watch, but they certainly haven't told us about it, which means they maybe haven't. When I compared the amount of engineering that went into making a Gravity Master shock resistant to what Victorinox did to make the INOX shock resistant, I really wanted to hate INOX, especially at the price they're asking for it, which was about $500 at the release. But guess what? Upon holding one in my hands, I must admit that not only do I not hate it, but surprisingly I like it quite a lot and see the appeal. A Gravity Master is still a G-Shock, meaning it comes with a G-Shock design that is not to everyone's liking. This, on the other hand, has a more serious design that one might call elegant compared to a G-Shock. Everything is beautifully shaped and gives you this feeling like the watch was sculpted. I especially love the design of the bezel that looks a lot like the one on the Girard-Perregaux Laureato. In fact, the whole watch looks like the GP on steroids. The crown guards are very big but flow with the case beautifully while giving the crown one of the best protections I have seen. So the crown just looks tucked away and safe from any harm. It is naturally a screw-down crown, which gives this watch a 200-meter water resistance. The finish of the case is a wonderful brushing that is done very well and feels silky under your fingers. The only polished parts are found on the slopes of the bezel. I would usually say that such a tough watch would be better off without the polished parts, as they will pick up scratches easier, but they just make the watch pop, and when I try to visualize it all scratched and beaten up, it looks even better that way. If you really want to preserve the watch, you do get this G-Shock looking bumper protection, but with it, the watch loses the one thing that separates it from G-Shocks, so I prefer to wear it without one. Oh, and just to make it clear, the 10-meter drop test I mentioned at the beginning was done without the bumper, so you don't have to worry about the watch losing its toughness if you wear it naked. You can also order a full body bumper that covers the watch completely, and it comes in different colors, but like I said, it works and looks best the way it is. The strap is a genuine rubber and has to be one of the best rubber straps I ever tried. It's not the plasticky junk you find on older Seiko divers, but it's also not the overly soft dust and lint magnet found on newer ones. Now don't get me wrong, I love newer Seiko rubber straps, but this one is right in between when it comes to softness and pliability, which makes it perfect. There's only one other strap I wore that felt this way, and it was on my Orient STI from 2010. It was durable, comfortable, and just a joy to wear, all day, every day. Now the only negative is that it is 21 millimeters wide, which is an odd size, somewhat limiting your strap options. And speaking of strap options, ever since the I.n.o.x was introduced, people were praying for a bracelet. And after supposedly 2 years in development, they did make one, so now you have that option as well. On top of that, if you want the full Doomsday Survivor styling, you can have it on a paracord strap as well. When it comes to wearability, the watch is large at 43 millimeters in diameter and a lug-to-lug of 51. The thickness is 13 and it comes in at a hefty 138 grams on a rubber strap, which helps in making the watch feel sturdy. Surprisingly, it doesn't wear as large as its dimensions would suggest, but I would still like to try the 37mm version just to see how it sits on my wrist. Plus, that one is a no-date version, which in my opinion looks better because of that. Since I mentioned the 37mm version, I should also mention that the I.n.o.x is also offered as a diver's watch with a rotating bezel, round loom markers, and increased size to 45mm. While the regular one is also offered in titanium and carbon case with slightly different dial that has the 369 numerals on the dial and a 24-hour scale on the underside of the crystal. The crystal on all models is a flat sapphire, and they say it's triple coated with AR, hopefully on the underside only, but again there's no info on it, so we can only guess. The crystal sits just slightly lower than the bezel, meaning it's well protected against chipping, and a 65-ton tank driving across it. The dial is, like I said, stamped from a single piece, but it doesn't give you that impression. It really looks like it has applied markers, and thanks to the sloping chapter ring with these cutouts for the markers, it has some depth to it. The chapter ring also has the 24-hour scale, or military time on it, but it's so small that one almost doesn't notice it at all. What one does notice is the outer part of the chapter ring that has yet another set of markers. And these are divided like on mechanical watches, which makes no sense on a watch that ticks once a second. So it's just a gimmick, and feels like they finished the dial and case, and when they went to assemble the watch, they noticed the two didn't fit, so to fill in the gap, they just made another chapter ring with a new set of markers. It really looks like an afterthought and should have no place on otherwise a pretty well designed watch. And I really like the design of both the dial and the hands, and love their use of the company logo as a 12 o'clock marker. It makes the dial less cluttered and very legible. The date is at 4:30 and done in white. Honestly, I think the watch would look better without the date altogether, or if they had to use it, I wish they went with black or matching green. The Loom is a bit of a letdown on this watch because the rest of the watch really set the bar pretty high and exceeded my expectations. So I kind of expected the Loom to be on the same level, but sadly it isn't. It's not completely useless, but it was barely visible when I woke up at 5 a.m. and that was after it was charged extensively with a UV flashlight before I went to bed. Now for comparison, I did the same with my SNX 111 just to see how the two compare, and the SNX was a lot easier to read and visibly stronger, and I consider it a dressy watch. Whether the diver model has better Loom, I have no idea, but I do hope it does. The watch is powered by a Swiss-made Ronda 715 quartz movement, and I really cannot complain about it. It is a high-torque quartz movement with an end-of-life indicator, meaning the seconds hand will skip to let you know when to change the battery. And that will not happen very often, as it's rated to have a 5-year battery life, which is impressive for an analog watch. I also love that the seconds hand hits the markers pretty much perfectly, which is often not the case even on more expensive watches. I did read about some people's watches being off, but the ones I had the opportunity to see were all near perfect. Now, to conclude, the Victorinox INOX is an excellent Swiss-made refined version of a G-Shock that has such a feeling of sturdiness and heft to it that you feel like it can really withstand anything you throw at it. It also looks great and feels great on the wrist. So even if you're a mechanical watch lover, having a grab-and-go quartz watch is always good, especially when it feels and looks as tough as this one does. Now, I personally have my G-Shocks for that, but if you want a more classic-looking end-of-the-world watch, this will fit great. It is a bit pricey for a beater watch, but that's the price of having a Swiss-made beater. Now, if you live in the US, you lucky bastards, just like with G-Shocks that are ridiculously cheap there compared to the rest of the world, these can often be had at way under $300, which makes it a bargain for what it offers. Some have argued they would like to see a mechanical version as well, but a mechanical watch could never be as top as even the cheapest quartz watch, so I doubt a mechanical version will ever see the light of day. Even if it does, it will most certainly not be able to handle a 10-meter drop test. Well, maybe if it was encased in a lot of that alpha gel I mentioned at the beginning. Well, this pretty much completes this week's review, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe by pressing this button right here. And until the next video, bye.